So as I said, good morning. You're most welcome. Thank you very much for being here. We are waiting for a few people, but we'll crack on. They'll find their way in due course. What I'd like to do first of all is to bring you a warm welcome from Adam Brancher, who's the current IIMS president. Adam is based in Australia, works out of Hobart, and he sends you his best wishes. He's sorry he can't be here with you in person. And also I bring you warm welcome from the IIMS Management Board based in the UK, of which, as I said, Zarir is part. And thank you for being here, Zarir. It means a lot to have you on board here. What I'd like to do over the next 45 minutes, I've got two presentations for you. The second one is a short presentation on standards, something that I've become quite passionate about. But what I'd like to do with the first bit of the presentation is talk to you a bit about the IIMS. I'm conscious you're not all members of the Institute. That's fine. I'm not here to do a heavy sell on you, but I am here to tell you about who we are and what we do. A little bit about me, perhaps my background. I am the least technical person you will meet, so please don't floor me with technical questions because I can't answer them. I don't know or didn't know a great deal about the marine industry when I took this role up just over 3 years ago. And actually what IIMS decided they wanted was someone who could run a business rather than someone who was another marine surveyor, because we have lots of marine surveyors. But they wanted someone who could actually run a business. So that's my background. I've worked for big companies in the UK. I ran a division of a FTSE 100 PLC with about 150 employees. That was the biggest organisation I worked for in the events sector. So my background essentially is a commercial background, been involved in marketing, general management, a lot of social media, which excites Zarir every time I mention social media. We'll talk about that in a minute. So that's my background. So, a little bit about the IIMS. We are or have emerged as the leading international professional body for the surveying profession over the years. I'll explain who the guy is in the picture in a minute. We offer graded membership. That's granted to those who can demonstrate a level of competency to meet the requirements of the PAC. The PAC stands for Professional Assessment Committee, and they are made up of very senior members within the organisation. And effectively, if you make an application to join, it's the PAC who will vet your application and make sure that we think you're a fit person to be part of the organisation. Roughly, membership is split between small craft surveyors who are looking at vessels up to 24 metres in size, and then what we call the commercial ship end, and everything in between, I might add. So it's a broad brush and a broad church. So last year we celebrated 25 years, our Silver Jubilee, and this is Captain Bill McDonald down here, cutting our birthday cake in London. Just a little story on Captain Bill. Those of you who do know him, I suspect most of you don't, currently based in Houston. And when we started our Silver Jubilee celebrations last year, I decided to try and dig out the man who invented it all, Captain Bill. I wasn't even sure if he was still alive, to be fair, and a succession of emails led me to him, based in Houston now, originally from Scotland, and an interesting guy. And he was telling me that he worked in Liverpool a number of years ago, and the reason he decided he wanted to form an organisation was simply because he was fed up of incompetent people getting on board ships in Liverpool to do surveys. And that's how it started. Our broad aims: we are an independent, non-political organisation. Our aim is to promote the professionalism, recognition, standards and training of marine surveyors worldwide. We do offer a range of services and benefits, but as I said to you today, I'm here to reach out to the wider surveying community. There's plenty of information available through IIMS for those who are non-members, as equally as there is for people who are members. But we do offer short course training. We offer distance learning, professional qualification. I'll touch on all of these in more detail. We publish the Report magazine quarterly. We organise conferences such as this today, and I'm conscious that we meet today in Singapore in challenging market conditions. I mean, I was truly shocked when I flew in yesterday to see the number of vessels laid up as you're coming in. That is a sure sign that things are tough. But we work in a strange world. In the UK, small craft surveyors looking at vessels up to 24 metres have never been busier. I don't know if they're making any money, but they're very, very busy, they tell me. And it's very, very hard to find a surveyor on the south coast of England, for example, because they are just busy. In the wind farm and renewable sector in Northern Europe, very, very busy, growing exponentially. And then you come to this part of the world and you realize things are really, really tough out here. So it's a mixed picture. I understand that. So I'm grateful for you to be here today. We work as an authorized MCA approved certifying authority. I'll explain a bit about that later. I think dissemination of essential news and information is something we're quite good at doing. And we do run a couple of interesting third-party accreditation schemes, which I will tell you a bit more about shortly as well. So my key highlights this year so far. IIMS is an organization that's very much growing. We are adding new members. We're bigger this year than we were last year. So that's a positive sign. One of the greatest achievements this year, which I was just discussing with a couple of guys earlier, is our continuing professional development app. The end of last year, I met an IIMS member called Ruchin Dial. He's out in Goa. And Ruchin said to me, he's got a team of guys building apps. And I said, but you're a marine surveyor? And he said, yes, but I build apps as well. So he took me down to his offices in Goa and he said, I can build you an app. Challenge at that time was, what did we want an app for? Well, actually, there's lots of things potentially you could have an app for. But we looked at CPD, and I'll touch on this briefly in a bit more depth in a minute, but CPD is a challenging area and something that we're passionate about. New database is not very exciting, is it? But actually, the way you organize your business is absolutely critical. We use a system called ACT, which is a very old piece of software. It's not really state of the art. And we have embarked on something called Zoho Creator, which some of you may or may not have heard of. It's a bespoke internet-based software solution, and we're very close to rolling that out now. It's going to transform the way that we operate as a business. We appointed earlier this year a new membership secretary. Some of you will know Jan Cox, who retired in February after many, many years with the organization. I was very concerned when I looked to recruit a replacement. It's hard when you know somebody who is very, very good at their job. Can you find someone as good? And we have found someone as good. A lady called Cam, or Cam for short, Camilla is her name, Robertson. So if any of you have any dealings with the membership side of the organization, it's Cam you'll be talking to. And she's been in situ now since the start of the year, and she's doing very well. Something I'm quite proud of, and I will touch on later, I'm currently the chairman of the Certifying Authority Professional Standards Working Group. And one of the things I want to do at the end of this presentation is to give you a second very short presentation. It's only about 10 minutes on standards and why I think they're important and why they matter. So that's a piece of work I've been involved with now for 18 months. And I will talk to you in a bit more detail about what that entails shortly. It's been a busy training year this year. We've done quite a lot in the spring. Obviously here now in Singapore, we have a busy autumn in the UK lined up with various events. We've got the IIMS conference in London coming up in September, and then we've got various trainings running through October and into November. We've developed a series of handy guides. Sorry, Mike, I'm competing with you in the publication sector here. Mike will obviously produce his books and so on. Actually, we don't really compete. Our series of titles is slightly different, but I'll touch on the guides that we now have. Marine Surveying Academy, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of the IIMS. I'm going to talk to you a bit about MSA, who they are and what they do. And as I've said to you, all of this is set against, in some cases, a very challenging sector. So we need to keep that and bear that in mind. This is where we work from in Portchester, a lovely old building built in the 17th century. Was a farm apparently originally, and used to own all the land around, right down to the sea. These days there's a big industrial estate behind it. It's all now overdeveloped and grown, but we still work in it in a very, very nice place. We don't own the whole thing. We have the top floor, and our landlords have the bottom floor. So IIMS is financially healthy. As I've said, we're replacing what is a flawed database act with Zoho Creator. That's now well underway. CAM is in situ. London conference is in September. We'll make some videos of that as well for anybody who's interested in seeing the content. And we hold our AGM on the 12th of September at Regent's University in London, if any of you wish to come to that. So a little bit on membership growth. IIMS currently has around 1,000 members in 97 countries, so truly international. Strong growth actually coming from, I would say, not the UK and not particularly Europe. We have quite a lot of new members in Nigeria, a few coming from UAE, there's some coming from India, some coming from the Far East, a few from Australia. Recently opened up Togo, was the most recent country that one member in Togo now, which was great. Always good to open a new country on the map. This year particularly, we've had a strong interest in new members from technician members. There's a reason for that, and I'll explain why that is later. But technician membership is the strongest growth this year. Our current level of full members is now 600. That is the highest level of full members we've ever had in the organisation's history. And it's interesting to see some absentee members coming back. I had 3 or 4 in the last month who've said, I've dropped out of membership 6 or 7 years ago. Things have changed. Will you have me back? Of course, we'll always have people back. And I quite like the new members who are coming in from different sectors of surveying are bringing in new skills. Certainly a lot of the people that we might call on to speak at future events are new members who come into the organisation. For example, Luke, I don't want to say too much about your skills, but you gave a brilliant presentation on dredging technology. And I suspect there aren't many people in the world who have that kind of in-depth knowledge on dredging. So it's great to have people like that who can bring specialist skills into the organisation that we can then disseminate the information amongst members. We lose about 4% of members annually. Concerning to lose 4% of members, but to be honest, we have a lot of retirees. We have sadly had several who died in the last year. So it's inevitable you're always going to get a churn. I'll tell a little bit about the CPD app. So CPD is not mandatory in IIMS, continuing professional development, but we do encourage people really strongly to do it. It's really, really important. And one of the things we debated at management board quite recently is whether or not you reward people who do CPD or if you punish people who don't. And the board decided that we would reward people rather than punish. So there will be an announcement coming in September about what that reward means, and I hope it is meaningful, but watch this space for some more information coming soon. So using Ruchin and his team in Goa, version 1 was launched in February, and it has always been a problem. CPD used to run on a 3-year cycle. You had to acquire 24 points over 3 years. I never understood why it was a 3-year cycle. Surely an annual cycle makes more sense. So we've changed that. So it's a January to December calendar year. We expect you to get 10 points. So for example, coming today, you get 5 points. It's not difficult to get 10 points. And we believe it's really, really important. Having launched version 1, there was nothing wrong with version 1, but Ruchin said we can make version 2 even aesthetically more pleasing. We can add some more features to it. So we moved on and we rolled out version 2 in beginning of June. There's an iOS version, there's Android, and there's a web-based solution as well. Most importantly, it's really easy to access. I've spoken to a couple today who've already used it. It's really simple to use. And since we launched, over 300 members have used it, and they have made 800 claims for points. Very simply how it works. If you're a member today, you can access the app here, live. You can go on. In actual fact, William tells me today's conference is not online yet. It will be later. Don't forget, we're 7 hours behind in the UK, so we need to play catch up. But once you can access it, you make your claim. That sends an email into the office to Cam. Cam can then, or her colleague can accept or decline that application. Once it's accepted, then your account is credited with 5 points. And it keeps a running total, so you'll know when you've reached your 10 for the year. It's very, very neat, very simple to use, and I'm really grateful to Ruchin for helping provide the solution to what was a real problem. So previously what used to happen is people would gather bits of paper, in fact mountains of paper, they would send it into the office. A, we have to store all of that paper. B, someone's got to go through it all to verify whether or not the claim is genuine. So this has made life much easier. And I was joking earlier that one of the things we said in a news bulletin was if you go to a boat show, which would entitle you to 1 CPD point, and hey, you're welcome. What you can do is take a selfie of yourself at the boat show with the name of the boat show in the background, attach it to the app, and within 2 days of doing that, we had 2 people do just that. So it's quite intuitive. It's a nice piece of kit. If you are a member, please do go and use it. So a little bit about professional qualifications. We reviewed and refreshed the distance learning program in January 2016. This was an important piece of work we had to do. We've actually been running this program now for over 15 years. It's split into 2 very distinct categories. So if you're a small craft surveyor, we would steer you down one route, obviously. If you're a large commercial ship guy, we'd steer you down a different route. There are in total about 34 modules that you can study, all on distance learning. And what we've done is the same great content when we launched it, but we've made some amends. We've rewritten Unit 1, which is an introduction to marine surveying. We've rewritten Unit 4, which is report writing. We decided that a commercial ship report is not the same as a small pleasure craft report, so we've rewritten the way that we display that information. Currently reviewing other units. This is an ongoing process. So we have a quarterly intake, and typically we've got about 100 students studying at any given time. So we might take 15, 20 sometimes on each quarter. And we work on an interesting below-the-line targeted marketing campaign. One of the challenges is to find people potentially to do this qualification. Marine surveyors are quite hard as a bunch. You're quite hard to target. But we've worked quite closely with an organisation in Portsmouth who are a specialist digital below-the-line marketing agency, and they've enabled us to actually target specific subsets within LinkedIn, for example. So if you are a master mariner on LinkedIn, you're probably likely to be told that there's a course running that might be relevant to you. And I have to say it's proved to be very, very successful. The days of placing full-page colour adverts at huge cost in non-specific magazines have gone. So we're very, very sensible now about the way we use what are relatively limited sums of money to try and drive this programme. Report magazine, you don't need to be a member to read the report these days. It's a nice title. My background is steeped in publishing, so the first thing I was able to really get to grips with was the report magazine. These are some examples of what we published just, actually. You can see here, much of this content has been specially commissioned, and I think that's what has really changed. I'm now going out and I'm trying to target potential authors for content that I think is going to be relevant. One of the challenges of each of the report magazine is I need to appeal to all ends of surveying and something in between, and that is not easy to do. So there's often some general articles in there, something on maybe business management, something on how to use the internet more effectively, what it may be, and then obviously articles that are of specific interest to small craft surveyors and commercial surveyors. But if you don't read it, I would absolutely recommend it to you. You can read it online through the IIMS website, either as a downloadable PDF or in an e-reader format. Published quarterly, next issue out September. Just a little bit about the IIMS Handy Guides. The series is entitled What a Marine Surveyor Needs to Know. And we kicked this off a couple of years ago, and it was really my challenge to some of the more senior experienced members within the organisation. I said to them, there must be a book in you. You've all got specialist subjects, areas of surveying that you know inside out and backwards. How about writing a book? So I threw the challenge out, and I actually got the offer of 35 manuscripts, which totally surprised me. We've currently brought 13 to market. Some examples, in fact, Milind, your book here on imaging techniques, great book if you don't know how to use a camera effectively. So we've now got 13 to market. 4 of them are on Kindle. Haven't sold millions through Kindle, but I'd like to get them all on Kindle and then really push that as a medium. Surveying Woodcraft, further 10 to come. Knowledge Management, interesting book for those of you who are involved. Obviously, all of us now involved with computers, but yacht and small craft report writing. Further 10 books to come, 3 more coming in the next month. So watch out for information. We've sold hundreds of books. And we've got his Introduction to Marine Surveying is selling really well. That's actually one of the best sellers. The other bestseller is Boat Building Terminology, which is written by a guy called Geoffrey Casciani-Wood, who's 88 and still going strong. And we sell a lot of copies of that. Yeah, Barry's written some good content for us. A little bit about websites. Again, you don't need to be a member of the organisation to access the IIMS website. Clearly, that's free for all. We actually manage 15 websites in total. And if I put that on a slide, people say, really? What have you got 15 websites for? But the branches now have their own websites. So there are 6 IIMS branches. They each have their own website, which we've built for them and help them manage it when we need to. Obviously, the main site is the most important one. So iims.org.uk is the site that is of most interest to you. Rich in surveyor content. It's news hungry. We update it most days. Always various news stories being posted up there. Do have a look. It's really, really worthwhile. There's 1,000 searchable stories online now, and we keep adding to it regularly. One of the things that I'm very quick to get out is MAIB reports from the UK. I know that Zero often comments on those. findings from accidents that have taken place. Sometimes very, very important to get that information out to surveyors fast. Lots of surveyor resources, and it's an optimized, a well-optimized busy site. We get 14,000 unique visitors a month to the site. That I find quite extraordinary for an organization that has 1,000 members to actually be able to attract 14,000 visitors a month. And between them, they look at about 30,000 pages. So it is a busy site, and they're growing all the time. A little bit on social media, love it or hate it. And I must admit, I do hate a lot of the social media. It's not that I don't get it, I do get it, I just choose not to do it personally. But from a business point of view, it's absolutely invaluable. What's changed in the last 10 years is the way that people take their news and take their information. Some people love LinkedIn, other people hate it. Some people are on Facebook all the time and love it, other people don't like it. Some people do Twitter, others don't get Twitter. But the point is, you have to be active on all these channels now. And I think we are. So Twitter, you can follow us at IIMS Marine if you're interested. We have about 1,200 followers. That's grown from a zero starter about 18 months ago. LinkedIn discussion group, which you need to apply to join, but if you're in the surveying profession, we'll accept your application. 1,000 plus members on that. And incidentally, if you just go to LinkedIn and type in IIMS discussion group, you'll find the group and you can send an application in. The YouTube channel, I mean, interestingly enough, and we have made 100 videos over the last 3 years. Again, just go onto the YouTube and look for IIMS. You'll find there's a lot of original content there. Some of it filmed at conferences, some of it filmed at training seminars. There's a lot of interesting information there. We are a new entrant to Facebook. Just really in the last month, actually, we've started to kick on. Why? Because we have someone in the office now who understands Facebook. Simple as that. A young lad called Dave who's joined us, and he said, I'm keen to do some stuff on Facebook, so I've encouraged him to get going. So love it or loathe it, I do believe you can't avoid it. So make it your business friend would be my advice. So a little bit about my work with the Professional Standards Working Group. Hi, how are you, Harry? Good to see you. Join us. No, no problem. So I took on this role, voluntary role obviously, from a guy called John Fernley, who works for an organisation called MECAL, one of the other certifying authorities. The challenge we have in the UK is a certifying authority is a licensing organisation contracted by the government to perform that service. There are about a dozen of us. We're not the biggest by any means, but it's an important piece of work we do. And it became apparent that we don't all adhere to the same standards. In fact, we are, in some cases, miles apart in terms of the standards. In other words, one certifying authority will interpret MGN 280 one way, another organisation will interpret it differently, and in this day and age, you frankly can't do that. So we're working closely with the other organisations now to serve up a common interpretation of this MGN 280 manual. So when it says that, what does it mean? Let's not have 10 different interpretations. And I always trot out the joke at this point in time that when you have 10 marine surveyors in a room, you're going to get 10 different opinions, and none of them are necessarily wrong. And of course, that is part of the challenge because it's all about opinions. So we need to have some common interpretation. We're working with Lloyd's Register on that, and there's various people involved in doing that piece of work. So the aim is to develop a minimum standard for coding surveyors, which potentially could lead to some sort of formal recognition. And I've used the example recently where a surveyor who had 10 wooden boats moved it from one certifying authority to another. The certifying authority he moved the work into said, they scrutinized his first one and said, well, you don't know what a wooden boat is. We don't want your business, thank you very much, we're going to suspend you. At which point he promptly took it to another certifying authority who said, oh, great, lovely, we'll have your 10 boats, no standard, no common standard. And that, frankly, is wrong. So it's a tough piece of work. Part of the challenge is getting this joint agreement between the certifying authorities. And we reached a point throughout last year where I was working towards developing a memorandum of understanding. Everybody signed up to the memorandum, although didn't physically sign the memorandum of understanding, but they agreed in principle. Oops, I jumped on too soon there. And the challenge now, in fact, the MCA, when they came out to meet us earlier this year, said, do you know what, good as the memorandum of understanding is, we want to write something into a new contract that all the certifying authorities in the UK sign. And I said, well, I'm encouraged by that. Why? And they said, because then we have teeth. As the MCA, then we can go to a certifying authority and say, well, you're not conforming to the standard. Now, what we haven't done is written the standard. And that's the next piece of work. So all of the certifying authorities in the UK will be writing a standard. And I think this is important work. Where this leads elsewhere in the world, I've no idea. But there is a challenge in the UK that we need to sort out and sort out fast. So just a little bit more about the certifying authority. For those of you who don't know, in the UK, any vessel that's used commercially up to 24 meters has to be coded by law. So that means licensed. We only have within our membership about, I think it's 52, 53 currently, who are IIMS approved certifying authority examiners. And as I've said, they must code to the specifications set out in MGN 280, which are open to interpretation. We're not the biggest. We have a fleet of 300 vessels, mixed fleet. A lot of those are small charter yachts. We've got some commercial workboats in there, some of these wind farm, fast crew transfer vessels, those type of things. We'd like to grow our certifying authority, and recently we've been approved by the Gibraltar Registry, which is good. We also, through our certifying authority, carry out tonnages. If you want to be a tonnage surveyor, just make an application. It's easy enough to do. We always encourage applications from new tonnage surveyors. And part of this work, this is a new website we launched just about 2 months ago, which is the certifying authority website, iimscertifyingauthority.co.uk. Our aim really is to now push out to the world with a soft marketing campaign. It's not heavy, hard-driven stuff, but we do want to push out and say, we're here and we're very, very good at what we do. I won't bore you with the history, but there was a very nasty incident about 5 years ago when one of our vessels, the Endurance, lost a tow off the south coast of England that led to the death of the crew, one crew. And as a result of that, the whole certifying authorities were turned upside down. And out of that has come a new understanding that we have to move the bar. We have to increase what we do. It's no longer good enough. And they went through us with a dose of salts, the MCA. They went through the other certifying authorities with a dose of salts, and we've all had to up our game. So challenging times. We do run and have to run by contract, 2 training sessions a year. Sometimes those are practical based. Sometimes they are more training room based like this today. Learning opportunities, just some examples of what we've done this year. We were in Athens for a 2-day training session back in January. Never snows in Athens, but we got to Athens and it was snowing and it was -5. It was very, very chilly. We did some tonnage training out there, which was great fun. We looked at ISM, which was interesting. April, we took a bunch of surveyors out to the Royal Hoosman Yard in Holland. If you don't know Royal Hoosman, they're building these iconic 80-meter, well, they're hardly yachts, they're almost small ships in their own right. Fantastic things. We go out to the Palma Super Yacht Show every year, hold our Western Mediterranean training group there, generally get about 20 or 30 people to that. September, as I've said, we've got the London conference coming up. Then November's a busy time for us. LY stands for Large Yacht Small Craft Working Group. We've merged the 2 into 1 now. So we're in Scotland for 2 days, do that every year. We have a super training day on the south coast. We generally get 40 to 50 people for that. And we'll be active at the International Super Yacht Coatings Conference in Amsterdam, where we'll be giving a presentation on some of the other work we do. November, Zaria, you'll be pleased. I'm going to promote your conference, any of you who find yourself in UAE. 27th of November, I believe. Yes. Yep. So watch out for more information on that. So just to give you an example of what we might do at one of these training days, I'm conscious most of this is aimed at small craft surveyors, which you guys are not. But with something on surveying large yachts by Simon Burt, who's well known. We always come back to report writing. Why? Because for small craft surveyors, certainly in the UK, report writing seems to be the biggest challenge. Very, very litigious in the UK now. And I get far too many complaints coming across my desk from people saying, well, I don't agree with what the surveyor said here, I'm going to sue him. I then get dragged in. And more often than not, I have to say, it's the quality of the report that has let the surveyor down. So we keep coming back and doing refreshers. Boat safety scheme, something for inland waterways in the UK. We'll be looking at PI claim reviews with Paul Winter. And then an interesting slot in the afternoon where Axonabel is a name I'm sure all be familiar with. We work quite closely with them. In fact, their office is just down the road in the UK from us. And they're going to look at some test plates with some flaws in the coatings. And we've got all the practical kit to enable you to have a play and see whether or not you can spot them. So that'll be fun. That's typically a sort of day we might do in the UK. And I'll wrap up with half an hour on business management skills. So online seminars, something we've trialed this year, using the Zoom platform, which I'm using to record today. I have to say this has been quite interesting. So they are maximum 90-minute seminars or lectures. In fact, Luke, you gave one on dredging technology. We've done a few others. Basic coating technology was very successful. We had about 40 online for that. The other one that was very successful was ultrasonic testing theory. We had about 30 online for that. What's great, of course, is you see someone from Canada coming online. We had somebody from Thailand online and lots from Europe online. It just makes learning considerably easier than having to come to a location. And it's been great. So we charge that out at £35 per seminar. You get a copy of the video that we make of the presentation and a copy of the presentation itself. So there will be more coming up this autumn. Just keep an eye out. You don't have to remember to take part in that. I want to talk very briefly about the Marine Surveying Academy. Registered Marine Coatings Inspectors course is something that we developed a couple of years ago, or RMCI for short. The super yacht industry was faced with a real challenge. Now we're talking about big boats here. They're seriously big boats or small ships. 50% of the vessels coming out of the yards were subject to a litigation claim because of the coatings. I was astonished when somebody said 50%. And because of the money involved, the vessel owner has no problem saying, well, I'm prepared to wager £5 million on a court case if I have to potentially get 50 million quid back because of the dodgy coat job. And we've got a couple of people actually who we work with, and we've now put 80 people through the standard. We've developed the standard in association with IIMS, some of you might know, CIBAS, you might know, the Super Yacht Builders Association. And it's been absolutely fascinating. So we've worked through a tutor succession plan. Those who developed the course and implemented the course, we've now moved on to the next level. New tutors in place. We've got some courses planned in Europe. Remarkably, and I know this is fact because I've been speaking to the chairman of the new ISO committee, the RMCI standard is going to be embedded in the new ISO on coatings, super yacht coatings. So RMCI will be deemed to be an acceptable standard as far as the ISO documentation is concerned. That's coming soon. And then some of you I know are enrolled through the ECMID program. Tough market out here at the moment. I overheard Howard saying earlier that ECMIDs are a bit light at the moment in this part of the world, non-existent. Yeah. But I don't want to say too much about this because I'm talking at length about this tomorrow for those of you here, but in mid-2015, working with IMCA, the International Marine Contractors Association, we developed an accreditation program from scratch for people who are involved in CMID, now called ECMID, and it's been a really, really eye-opening process, I suppose, or journey. So we've had applications from about 350 people. If you don't know what CMID is, it's Common Marine Inspection Document. It's a vessel audit. It's not a survey. And since that time, we're approaching our 300th person who will be accrediting probably in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So exciting piece of work. And not everybody gets through. I think that's the most important thing to say. We have rejected people, and no names, no pack draw, but the people who come forward for accreditation who are simply not suitable to do this work. If you're getting on board a jack-up vessel, we would argue you need to have presented us with objective evidence that you know what a jack-up vessel is and how it operates. If you can't do that, we're not going to accredit you. So that was what IMCA wanted. I think that's what we've delivered. There is some big changes in this sector coming on the 1st of January 2018, driven by IMCA. Talk a lot more about that tomorrow. But what's happening is that they are closing the market down. So if you are not an accredited AVI, then you're going to find it tough to get on board vessels and do that work moving forward. Just in the last month, and again, I will speak more about this tomorrow, there have been 3 organisations, big organisations. One is Vattenfall, some of you might know this, the Swedish energy giant. Another is Dong International, or Dong Energy, again, huge in the wind farm sector. And Siemens, a name you will all know. All 3 of them in the last few weeks have said, if you're not an accredited ECMID AVI, you won't be working on our vessels. So the scheme has got some teeth, and I think we're quite proud of it, and the work we've done has been fascinating. We held our first conference in Amsterdam. Our second seminar will be tomorrow here in this room. So thank you for your attention. I've got 10 minutes to go. I'm going to now switch into the second presentation. And I want to talk to you about standards. And if there's one thing I've become very, very passionate about, I suppose in the last 2 years, it's simply standards. As I said to you earlier, I'm not a technical guy. I don't understand marine particularly. I didn't, I've learned. But there is nothing in the UK, and I suspect the same over here anywhere in the world, to stop me putting a sign outside my house saying, Mike Schwarz, Marine Surveyor. I might not get any work, because I know what I'm talking about, but there's nothing to stop me. There's no barrier to entry. And that has increasingly concerned me. And I don't think there's a political will internationally to do anything about it either, which also concerns me. And I suppose it takes the next big disaster before, sadly, more changes are made. So I've become quite passionate about this. What does this all mean? You can't even read that because my blurb is over it. Why do standards matter? What I find fascinating about standards is that there are so many you can potentially choose from. Who defines the standard for marine surveying? Actually, you do. You set the standard. Who knows if it's acceptable or not, but you set the standard. So think about it in your daily lives. There are standards everywhere. We expect standards. If we go out and we have a meal, if we go to a hotel, you expect a standard. And standards matter because when acceptable standards are absent, that's when people notice. So when something is not up to standard, you complain. You don't go back. You tell your friends about a bad experience you've had, a bad meal, or whatever it may be. There you are. What is a standard? Well, the dictionary definition quite simply is a required or agreed level of quality or of attainment. That doesn't really say much, does it? There has to be a minimum standard. What are we all working towards? And the test of any standard is that it becomes a part of the system, that the end user does not give it a second thought because it becomes enshrined in what you expect. But if you are going to enhance and improve your standards, there will be costs and you must invest time to do that. It's your effort and your commitment and a contribution from you that will make the difference. So let me say to you, why bother to enhance standards? We're all happy with what we do, maybe. We don't get complaints about the work we do, maybe. So why enhance your standards? I would argue to make you an even better surveyor. To enable you to keep a grip on the rapidly changing world. I mean, let's face it, technology is driving things at a crazy rate at the moment. We've got autonomous ships coming. So my argument would be, if you don't understand how an autonomous ship works, how can you get on board one and survey one? So there is an onus on the surveyor to constantly look to develop. And of course, to set yourself ahead and apart from those who are incompetent or less experienced surveyors. You can use it to further your reputation in your field of expertise. And I would argue to make you a more marketable surveyor in the marketplace. Ultimately, surely it's about having a sense of pride, safe in the knowledge that you have carried out your work to the highest possible standard and not just to an acceptable standard. So what about benchmarking your standard? How do you know? Especially when no minimum exists. How do you know if your standards are high? Here's some things you could do. Find a surveyor locally whose work you admire or someone you respect in the industry. See how they achieve their results. You could analyze their work methods. You can then make your plan to improve and enhance your own performance. Implement your plan, monitor and evaluate the results. Perhaps you can even approach that person you admire and ask them if they might mentor you. Mentoring means lots of things. It doesn't mean spending loads of time with you. It means having someone that you can bounce information off. I'm sure lots of you have been mentored over the years. So, how could you improve your standards? You could gain further professional qualifications, although I'm always going to argue, great their qualifications are, without a practical element to them, I always question how useful they are. You need to get that practical experience in a new sphere. Always seek help and acknowledge areas of weakness. We all have areas of weakness. I know what mine are. I go and get help with those areas that I struggle with. Could learn some new skills. As I've said, keep your CPD up to date. Network with your peers. One of the great things about coming to an event like this today, it's free to talk to people, it's free to ask people things, get their advice, chat over coffee, make the most of the networking opportunities. And my point is that we're educated as children. That's what we do when we're children, we learn. So why do we stop when we get to a certain age? Why do we think education or learning things is not important? I try and learn something new every day, and I think that's a good thing. But we, as a professional body, have a role to play in this, as indeed do the other professional organisations. We need to arrange days like this, face-to-face training days, providing online training seminars, providing networking opportunities, offering mentoring services. What does that mean? Not easy to organise mentoring. We do it, but it's not formalised. But if someone comes to me and says, Mike, I'm looking for a mentor, we'll try and find them a mentor. But it's not easy to do, but you do need to try and look for people who can help you. Cascade information and regulatory news, that is something that professional bodies must do. Share best practice and knowledge, codes of conduct, that type of thing. But the most important thing as an organisation we must do is this, to ensure that incompetent surveyors are denied membership and are left in the cold. And we do that. Not everybody who applies for membership of IIMS gets in. We're not frightened to say to people, sorry, you don't have the right skills, you need to acquire more knowledge, go away, come back in 2 years' time, whatever it may be. And I'm ashamed to say that not all professional bodies are like that. We want to work with you wherever possible to help you develop new skills. So, for me, here's the crunch and why this really does matter. It is time to rid the industry of incompetent surveyors and those who talk a good story. There's plenty of those around. And I'm not referring to the young guys. You know, when you're young and you're an aspiring surveyor, do you know what? You're entitled to make a few mistakes because that's how you learn. And we need to support those people because they are the future of our industry. But those who knew a lot once and didn't do any CPD 10 or 15 years ago were a competent surveyor. If you've not kept up to date, if you're not aware with what's changing around you, I would question whether or not you are still competent. So my question to you today is, how much are you prepared to invest in your self-development? Invest nothing, stay as you are. That's absolutely fine. Nothing wrong with that. Especially when you get to a certain age and you think, oh, well, you know, I'm near to retirement, I don't need to learn anything else. That's absolutely fine. Or you could invest in yourself. And the simple reality is that if you don't invest in yourself, probably nobody else will do it. Unless you're lucky to have a big employer who's got a big budget and is prepared to put some money in. But for most people, that's not the case. So you should set yourself a small budget every year. And somebody said, well, how much is a small budget? Rule of thumb, 3%. 3% of your turnover you should be spending to develop yourself. And that might be coming to a course, it might be learning a new skill, doing whatever you need to do. 3% of annual turnover. And how much time are you willing to put in? Because time is money, isn't it? If you're not working, you're not earning. So how much time are you prepared to put in? Warren Buffett said, the best investment you will ever make is in yourself. And I think he's right. My final word on standards. I think this is an industry responsibility. It's not just an individual one. As an industry of surveyors, we need to take combined responsibility for pushing standards up. You desire to be recognized rightly as a professional and experts in your sector. So totally agree with all of that. So if we care deeply about the surveying profession, we must care about developing and maintaining ever higher standards. Training plus education equals competency. Thank you very much for your attention.